All right, Cassie, let's go ahead and go through your paper. I'm going to start with MLA format and your title. Spacing wise, okay, this is good. This is good. Your title, Depression Then or Now. I think you need more context here. Depression's prevalence. I don't know. You need something because depression, then or now, seems a little weird. I'm not quite sure what question you're asking. Your in-text citations, you've got some which look okay. You've got a spacing concern there. Let's see, you've got a spacing concern right there on this page. Your page numbers look good. And then we get down here. This is a concern. Your works cited needs to be at the very top. This does not need to be underlined. And then right here, you threw this here probably at the end. And that needs to be fixed. That's not an MLA format. But looking at the rest of your sources, it's in alphabetical order. Oh, excuse me. Oh, there we go. We have Jean Twang. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name. So I don't know why that is there. It's technically not in the correct order. And the reason that I have that up there as well, and the reason I would... I don't know. It's a tough call. But overall, this website is different than what you have up there. So that is not completely correct. So, Cassidy, going through your paper, let's start right here with your introduction. This is your thesis, essentially. And I know you have right here, these contribute to depression and anxiety, increase numbers of those depressed, but you need to think of a different way to set this up, because essentially this is what your thesis is. Throw this down here, and then put social media, community ties, blah, blah, are all factors that contribute to the rise of depression and anxiety. Because this right here, how it is for by itself is, this just says this is what causes depression and anxiety, which isn't quite what you want to get into. So you want to set it up more with what you have later on about what depression is, what anxiety is, and anxiety disorders. You want that more built up in the beginning, and put this closer to the end of that first paragraph. Let's see. What else? You technically have an incorrect number here. 300 million people have an anxiety disorder, which is approximately 1 in 5. Because this is a World Health Organization, you need to specify here if that is the United States. And then right here, I don't know if this is how the article has it, or if it's because I told you to put spell out numbers less than 10. But when it's something like that, just put the number 6.7 with the percentage sign, because once you get into decimals, you don't need to spell that out. But overall, your introduction is okay. I think it needs some retweaking. This needs to go lower, closer to your thesis, and you need a better build up for what your paper is going to be about, and some identification there. Because as we move on, this paragraph is okay. I'm not sure what... You don't really have a topic sentence. I almost feel like this might be better in your introduction. It's kind of a hard call. And for the purpose of this, because we all should have an understanding of what depression and anxiety is, just because the class is writing this, I don't even know if you need to, but I'm not going to ding you on including it. I just don't know if this needs its own paragraph unless you put something more into it. Because you don't really have a purpose of what this paragraph is other than defining what it is. Because you already have this right here. And I guess the reason it's hard to say is you have all this about depression and anxiety, and then you define it. So I think maybe putting this information in the intro and then getting into numbers would be a little bit better, because then you could really get into some better topics with it. And even then, that would be okay, because in your second paragraph, if you had your thesis, that would be okay, because your introduction is, here's what depression and anxiety is, and then move on to a paragraph of who is affected by it, and then have your thesis of, this is who is affected. But otherwise, you're writing, whoops, go away dictionary. This is okay. Only thing with citation is you don't need the year Here, you just need the author's name and a page number if it exists. So, because when we move on to what it is, you have social media strongly related to increased number of diagnosed cases of depression and anxiety. You're missing a word here, be aware of that. And then you go on to talk about social media. And then we get a little bit awkward with the spacing here. Whatever. One thing I want to point out as well is you can't say apps because this is actually an abbreviated version of the word application. So you need to put, if you want to use apps, you have to say other media applications, parentheses apps, and then you can start using apps again. But I know this is very common language and lingo in what we have today with social media apps, but you need to say applications there. And when we move on with the rest of your paragraph, ooh, my screen went dark and I don't know why. Hold on. Okay, now that I have that fixed. So you go on, this is an issue as well. Before social media, people would call, email, or speak in person. This is a little bit, it's not as relevant. You just need more context to it. I think you may need some research to say people aren't doing this as often, because otherwise this is just kind of isolated in there without much context to it. They talk about simplicity, complexity, and then kids want the approval of others on how they look, and when they don't receive it, they seclude themselves from others. And research shows that these applications all led to increased feelings of depression, anxiety, poor body image, and loneliness. So if you look at your topic sentence, social media is strongly related to increased number of diagnosed cases of anxiety and depression. The problem is you don't really have that. Oh, no. Yes, you do. Well, it's a tough call because it has increased feelings, but it doesn't necessarily say that it's increasements in diagnosis of depression and anxiety. It's a little bit of a tough call. And I think you could do a little bit more with this paragraph. I'm not really sure off the top of my head how to do this. This dictionary needs to go away. Because you talk about, okay, increased diagnosed cases, and then more applications are created, and then they're more complicated. I don't think if they're more complicated, really need to do anything, because on a technicality, couldn't we get that from emails? I think you just need more context of what's going on. I think that's what's missing, because this doesn't have any context. Whether or not they're complicated, I don't know. It's hard because even here, not as much dispute. I think you need research to back this up, because they were not for adolescents to judge each other. But on the flip side, you can use email and media to do that and judge people anyways, because you have newspaper. You can do it by email. Like, hey, like theoretically, if our school had only email and not social media, you could literally email the rest of the students in the class, like, hey, did you hear this about so-and-so? So I think you just need more context here. And then the thing is, you need some more transition statements. So between these two paragraphs, I think a great way to have done your transition is we talk about, you have a little bit of secluding people, so you lose out on that social interaction, which would be a great way to lead to these community ties. And Cassidy, this is what I've noticed with your writing in the past, and I still see this here as well. Is this right here? This is because you don't have any research. This is very, very hypothetical. They would check in on their neighbors, do things as a community, and be there for each other when needed. I think a lot of times these things still happen. I think the numbers have probably gone down, but you need research to back yourself up. Feel as if they have nobody because they have limited interactions with their neighbors. Well, again, it's hypothetical. How do we know they feel they have nobody? Like, where are the statistics or numbers that prove this? So overall, what I'm noticing is you need a lot of context added to your paper. And then you're kind of dipping into hypothetical territory, which sucks because I think you have some good things going, but you need research to add context, because the way that I'm looking at your wording can be manipulated in a way that's not necessarily true. All right. So as we move on to the rest of your paper in paragraphs, I'm seeing a lot of the same things I've already told you is I need context and research. So right here, I think this is good. Orville Gilbert Brim, author of whatever. I don't really know who he is, so maybe some context there. People have being famous as a main goal in life. But the rest of that, like when they realize they can't make it this far, they feel as if they failed. I think that needs some context and some research to back it up. I think right here, it's a tough call. They don't care how much money they had as long as they had enough to support their family. Didn't matter how popular because of the support they received. It did not matter to them how popular they were because of the support they received through their family and community. And I believe everybody has to know their name and know who they are. So all this, I think, I'm sorry if this video seems a little bit weird. I'm trying to think of how to explain this in the best way, but I don't know if you're necessarily wrong. But I don't know if I would say most individuals didn't care about these certain issues. And it just goes back to, I think you need research to back this up. I think certainly most of us can say we know someone older than us who this wasn't an issue. And I think part of it is with social media having that ability to get famous quick. I think maybe that's a big difference as well, because you used to have to work so hard, go through the industry, you had to be found by someone. And meanwhile, you have these reality TV shows and social media to get you famous. And I think, again, you just need context and research to back up your claims because you're back in that hypothetical territory. As we move on to family relationships, again, we're missing some of those transitions. How do we go from this to make it more topical? Not only do people feel like they're a failure when they don't get recognition, but I don't know, you need something there. And I think you're absolutely right. Family life has changed a lot, but again, we're a little bit all over the place here. When families are doing more things together, they feel a close connection, they feel loved. And then you go into this random quote without having introduced who Freed was. So when you introduce these people for the first time, you need to give context to who they are. You also need to get rid of this period, put a space here, and then you're good. Now, when you explain, this quote shows how teens change when addicted to video games. This quote to me showed nothing about teens changing because of video games until you had this. I think you need to put this first and then explain more about the addiction has caused them to create social and physical damage because of an addiction to it. So be aware of that. And then you get into marriage and divorce, which is a good topic to go on. But I think right here, separation parents can leave adolescents to feel as if their parents don't love them. You've got a contraction. Get rid of that. I think you just need some more context here because you've got include research that proves this, like throw in a quote or something and then explain the significance of that. All right, Cassidy, so I've got a minute and a half left, so I need to wrap up some things because I haven't been able to get through as many things in your paper as I would like with the 15 minutes, but I do want to talk about what I'm seeing overall. I think your conclusion is okay. These are all major reasons they've increased, can't be eliminated, but can be addressed. Great. Can be supported. You don't necessarily need new information in the conclusion. I would get rid of that. And I think this is good. And I think you did a good job. I didn't require it of doing a counter argument where you talk about they weren't talked about. But I think you have some good points with there. I think you just need to take it a little bit more and amp it up. But overall, what I'm noticing with your citations is, well, with your paper is you're kind of teetering in the hypothetical range. You need research to back you up. And I think the points that I looked at your paper and pointed out to you, you haven't proved to us that this is what's going on because you don't have the evidence there. Your works cited is pretty good. I think when you introduce sources, well, I know when you introduce sources the first time, you need to have more context. But as you move forward, and I would encourage you to do a rewrite, make sure you add context, prove us with research, and get rid of the hypothetical, and let me know if you have questions.